to Acts 4, verse 12, to see that it's only by Jesus we are saved, and there's no other source of salvation. Acts 4, verse 12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given unto man whereby we must be saved. So salvation is by Jesus alone.
But like I was already saying, I don't think we really get that we are saved by faith and not by our works, because his faith really begins the whole thing, really. And this was a teaching that I think transformed me, because this is actually a major kind of thing.
Okay.
We can now go to Romans 4, 1-5. Therefore, being justified by... What?
Romans 4, verse 1.
Romans 5. My bad. Romans 4, my bad. What shall ye say then by Abraham our father, as pertaining to the flesh hath found? For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God. For what saith the Scripture? Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness. Now to him that worketh is the reward, not reckoning of grace, but of doubt. But to him that worketh not, but believeth on him that justifieth the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness.
That verse speaks to me, saying just because Abraham had faith, he was counted for righteousness, because justification meant to be declared righteous. And in verse 3, we can see that God counted him righteous because of his faith. And verse 5 say, but to him that worked not, but believed on him that justified the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. So this shows it's very important to have faith in God.
And our next scripture is John chapter 20, verse 24 through 29. That's John chapter 20, verse 24 to 29.
But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said unto him, We have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, Except I shall see in his hands unto them, and except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger in the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days again his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, Peace be unto you.
Then said he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. And Thomas answered and said unto him, My Lord and my God. Jesus said unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet believe.
Basically, that just shows us an example of someone in the Bible who did not really have that much faith, because he said that he had to see Jesus alive. Even though he already saw Jesus, he didn't believe that he was risen from the dead. So he was saying that he had to see to believe, so he didn't have as much faith as he should have in Jesus.
And also the verse say that blessed are they that have not seen and yet believe. So show that those who haven't seen Jesus are blessed because they believe even though they have not seen.
Yeah.
And I think that verse talk about us because we know Jesus died like 2,000 years ago. We was not alive during that time, but we believe by faith in him in the past that he died for our sin. So that also talk about us. We didn't see it, but we believe it in faith that he already died for our sin about 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. Our next scripture is Romans chapter 5, verse 1.
We went to that already.
We already did Romans 5.
Mm-hmm. Did we do 16 to 17?
Okay, we're going to do verse 16 to 17 now.
And not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but for the free gift is of many offenses unto justification. For if by one man's offense death reigned by one, much more that they which receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Jesus Christ.
If you look at the verse, right, you could see that God bless Paul with good writing skills, and this is kind of like he's comparing the past and the present. Like he says, and not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. So almost just as it was in the past, it is a different thing in the present now. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses unto justification. So it was condemnation in the past, and now it is justification. And now he says that by one man's offense death reigned by one. He says by Christ they receive abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness by one. That's Jesus Christ.
Okay, we go to Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. Galatians 2, verse 20. Galatians 2, verse 20 says, I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And the quote under that, that's what Matt, you found. You want to read it?
Although we are justified by the merits of the blood of Christ and through the instrument of faith, it is also true that works of loving obedience are the evidence of saving faith. A group of concerned leaders stated in 1976, in the last judgment our works of faith and love testify to the reality of justifying faith in our union with Christ. We are still saved by justification through faith without any works of law, that is, without any meritorious works. Christ Our Righteousness, Review and Herald, May 27, 1976, page 4.
And I basically explain the verse.
Our next question is, how can someone be justified or declared righteous? We are justified by faith in Jesus Christ alone. We go to Galatians 3, verse 24.
Same book, but just in chapter 3, verse 24.
Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith.
I'm trying to see what I think that means right now. For those listening, to try and explain it. It says the law is our schoolmaster. So I'm thinking like the commandments.
Not the commandments. This is, if you have to do a very good study to understand this better, but that's not the 10 commandments. This is the ceremonial law he's talking about. He's saying that the ceremonies leaded you to Christ, and because the law can't. How? I mean, you have to ask yourself, how can the law, the Ten Commandments, lead you to Christ? That doesn't really make sense. I mean, I don't mean that it's bad. The law is bad, but I mean,
I think you
it
should say it a
doesn't-
different way, because
I like how you say that it was meaning the ceremony law. I learned that when they used to kill a lamb and put the blood in the temple and all those stuff that they used to do, it was pointing to Jesus, because Jesus was going to shed his blood for us, and that how we are saved by Jesus' righteousness, because he lived a pure life and his blood paid for our price. So those people who was living in that time, every time when they kill a lamb and did all those ceremony stuff, they was looking forward to Jesus, who was going to be the true lamb to pay for their sin. And that showed that they had faith, the fact that they did that all the time.
yeah. Because like at the end it say that we should be justified by faith. Like basically what we're talking about now. You was finished explaining it.
well,
She explained the rest.
yeah.
Okay. And it says, wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we may be justified by faith.
But I mean, I guess if I could explain it right, the word schoolmaster, you could, that's like a teacher, right?
Yeah.
So, the laws taught you about Christ, basically directing you. So,
Like the sanctuary
yes.
teach us the way to God.
Mhm.
I guess you have to like do a complete, well, can't really complete, like a study on the sanctuary to explain it more. Because like, for a second I thought there's been the Ten Commandments, but thanks for explaining that. But I understand now, since you say with the sanctuary laws, because all throughout the sanctuary it just points us all the way to Jesus, and we could see Jesus all through the sanctuary. And with their faith, basically they was having faith, like Tamika was saying, with their faith, it was because that was before Jesus came. So they were doing the sanctuary. That was before Jesus came and killing lambs. And now in our times, we praying to Jesus and we never saw him. So back then they hadn't seen him with the sanctuary part, and until he came, and then that's when the sanctuary stopped, when he died on the cross. And then now with us, we're praying to him, and it's basically almost the same thing, except without killing the lamb and having to go through the whole process with the priests and stuff. So back then they had to be justified by faith, and now we have to be justified by faith as well.
Our next scripture can be Philippians 3, verse 9. And he be found in him, not having my own righteousness, which is of the law, but that which is through the faith of Christ, the righteousness which is of God by faith. So this verse shows again how righteousness is by faith in God and not our own righteousness. When I say which is of the law, that got me thinking, like, Paul was a Pharisee, so probably they thought they was righteous because they kept the law. But probably he realized that him himself keeping the law in his flesh won't make him righteous. Righteousness is only found in Jesus alone and what he done for us.
If you look at verse 6, he actually says that he did have a false righteousness too, in verse 6, where it says, concerning zeal, persecuting the church, touching the righteousness which is in the law, blameless. So basically, what he, in another way, he's trying to say that in righteousness, the righteousness which is, like, if you say that according to the law, the righteousness which is of works, he was blameless in that, because he was like devoted to keeping the commandments, and he had a what they call filthy rags righteousness. He
He had a righteousness which he thought was based on his own works, Because even in verse 5 it say, concerning zeal,